On the latest edition of the Barcelona podcast, Francis and I went back and forth drafting our teams of the decade. Today, I don't have to worry about him taking my first choices because I'm selecting my all-decade team. Hi, I'm Dan Hilton, and this is the Barcelona podcast, YouTube exclusive. So, setting up the rules here. We were just talking 2010 to 2019, so technically the second half of the 2009-10 season and ending with the first half of this year. So that means while Xavi and Carlos Puyol are some of the best ever at their positions, we're only considering the players that they were in the last decade. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get started. Where else can we start but on the right wing? Well, not really the right wing, because he played as a false nine for part of the decade and really sets up wherever he likes. But Lionel Messi is the first name on this team sheet. All the moments that he has given us this decade, at the Bernabeu, against Man United, and every opponent in between. 5 Ballon d'Ors this decade, 6 European Golden Shoes, and 7 times named La Liga's best player. His 91 goals in 2012 was a record, as are his 369 league goals and 141 league assists, tops in the top 5 leagues in both of these categories. Due to just Messi's accomplishments this decade, Barcelona's all-decade team is probably the best of any team in world football. And who profited more than anyone else this decade from Messi's assists? It's of course Luis Suárez. The hat-trick without Messi in the 5-1 victory over Real Madrid last season is probably the highlight, but his more than 140 goals in more than 180 appearances since arriving in 2014 from Liverpool is hard to believe. 4 La Ligas, 4 Copa del Reys, the Champions League, 2 Spanish Super Cups, and a FIFA Club World Cup are what he's won since his arrival. Completing the front three is the man that completes the legendary MSN Trident. Neymar arrived from Santos in 2013 to much fanfare as Barcelona beat Real Madrid to his signature. Before he left in 2017 for PSG, he made 123 appearances and scored 68 goals, including against his future team in the Champions League and in the final against Juventus. Leaving in the way that he did and the path that the club has been on since his exodus does make it difficult to put the Brazilian on this list, but the incredible seasons he had at Barcelona mean I couldn't leave him off it. The backups for MSN aren't too shabby themselves. 33 goals for David Villa from 2010 to 2013, including some memorable moments in El Clásico and the Champions League. Pedro scored 99 goals this decade before leaving for Chelsea in 2015. Alongside Messi, this duo redefined what football could look like, and under Pep Guardiola, they conquered the world. Villa played out of position on the left, and Pedro took being a substitute or a starter with the same production and mentality, before opting to chase a starting spot at Stamford Bridge. Alexis Sánchez overlapped with them from 2011 to 2014, and while he never took to being a complementary piece, he still scored 39 goals and helped the club collect a number of trophies before having his position taken by Neymar. Let's get to the midfield three. Another instant name on the team sheet is Andrés Iniesta, who left the club in 2018 to more than likely finish his career in Japan with Vissel Kobe. Just this decade, as well as winning 21 trophies with Barcelona, he has recorded 3 top 4 Ballon d'Or finishes, made 5 UEFA Teams of the Year, was 4 times named the best attacking midfielder in La Liga, and was named the UEFA Best Player in Europe in 2012. His forever partner on the pitch, Xavi only played 6 seasons for Barcelona this decade, leaving for Qatar in 2015, but he still gets a spot in the starting lineup for just how good he was in the first few years of this decade. He was a part of the 2 Champions Leagues, 4 La Ligas, and a host of other trophies, but as an individual, he also placed 3rd for the Ballon d'Or on 2 occasions. He was twice named the Liga Midfielder of the Year and named to 3 UEFA Teams of the Year. And I bet you can guess who the final midfielder is. Still just 31 as the decade comes to a close, Sergio Busquets dominated the decade and changed the defensive midfielder position. There have been many imitators, but his 7 La Ligas, 5 Copa del Reys, and the Champions League speak for themselves. He made over 320 appearances for the club in the decade, scoring 10 goals in 10 years. But who needs goals when you do what Busquets does for a club? Xavi's spot wasn't guaranteed this decade, though, and our first midfield sub made it a closer call than you'd think. Remember the man that got himself into the starting lineup for Luis Enrique and scored in the Champions League final? Some fans may not like to hear it, but even Rakitić has been a star for Barcelona. Since arriving from Sevilla in 2014, he's played everywhere 2 different managers have needed him, scoring 24 goals along the way. Another name that Culés may not remember fondly that needs to be mentioned here is Cesc Fàbregas. He made close to 100 appearances from 2011 to 2014, scoring 28 goals, but never really fitting in. When he returned, he was expected to be the transition between Xavi and the next great generation, but it just never happened, and he left after just 3 seasons at his childhood club. The final midfield backup spot was the hardest to pick because Busquets has been so established in that position for the entire decade. So this spot goes to Thiago Alcântara, who left in 2013 to join Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich. He made 68 appearances with 7 goals, but as a player in his early 20s, wanted to be a consistent starter. Brother Rafinha, who was still on loan at Celta de Vigo this season, made 56 appearances for the Blaugrana this decade, with 8 goals. The other 2 candidates were Artur and Frankie de Jong, but here's hoping that these are the first 2 names on the all-decade team 10 years from now. Let's move to the back line, starting on the left with Jordi Alba. Alba arrived from Valencia in 2012 and seemingly becomes more important to the team every season. He's made over 200 appearances, and while it seems like he scored more than just the 9 goals, his partnership with Messi has arguably kept Barcelona afloat at times since Dani Alves left. There's only one option for the backup left spot, and that's Eric Abidal. Abidal returning from cancer and raising the Champions League trophy is one of the defining images from the decade, and he wasn't too bad of a player either. 3 La Ligas, 1 Copa del Rey, and the aforementioned Champions League trophy all went into his cabinet, and now he hopes to get a few more as the current sporting director. On the right side, it's Dani Alves. It has to be. Selected twice to the UEFA Team of the Year, Alves scored 15 goals for Barca this decade, assisting on a whole lot more en route to 5 La Ligas, 3 Copa del Reys, the 2 Champions Leagues, and a few trophies as well. The now 36-year-old was heavily criticized in his 2 seasons before he left the club, maybe a little too early now that we've seen him at Juventus, PSG, and currently Sao Paulo. The backup for Alves is Sergi Roberto, who spent the decade going from a fringe player in the midfield to the 4th captain of the current squad at right back. His goal in the remontada against PSG is one of the moments of the decade, but his time at right back wasn't just that moment. He had huge games in El Clásicos and at 27 is still in his prime. Time for the center backs. The first name in our center back pairing has to be Gerard Piqué. He started the decade being chosen as La Liga's best defender and has twice been named to the La Liga Team of the Season and once to the Champions League Team of the Season. Alongside Messi, Busquets, and Roberto, he's the 4th player on this list to be around all decade. Weird how those 4 are the current captains, right? Partnering Piqué is probably the most difficult choice for our all-decade team. If it was all-time, it's Carlos Puyol, who retired in 2014. But for this decade, I'm going with Javier Mascherano. The Argentine left in 2018 after making more than 200 appearances for the club. He scored his 1 goal against Osasuna from the penalty spot in 2017, a position that he admitted the team forced him into. The 5 La Ligas, 5 Copa del Reys, 2 Champions Leagues, and 3 Spanish Super Cups gave him the edge this decade over Puyol. That said, Puyol was named to 1 UEFA Team of the Year in 2010 and retired when he was still capable of being the leader that Barcelona needed. He was the captain of the club for a total of 10 years and is a club legend. I don't think we would have gone wrong going with the man with the shaggy hair. There is a bit of a drop-off for the 4th center-back spot because Piqué was a starter for the entire decade. Sami Umtiti gets the nod, though, coming from Lyon in 2016. While he has been dealing with injuries for the last 2 seasons, he's made 68 appearances, scored 2 goals, and shown flashes of being the center-back that Barcelona will need once Piqué hangs up his boots. That is if he can stay healthy. In net, we also have 2 right answers. I'm going with Marc-André ter Stegen because of what he's done this decade, while Víctor Valdés still has the more storied career. They both won the Champions League trophy as the starting goalkeeper, and believe it or not, ter Stegen has already made more than 130 appearances for the club since arriving from Borussia Mönchengladbach in 2014. He had a split time with Claudio Bravo in that first season, but the German has gotten better and better. Just like with Puyol, picking Valdés isn't the wrong choice. From 2010 to 2014, when he left for Manchester United, he won 2 La Liga Best Goalkeeper awards, 3 Zamora trophies, and all the other team trophies that the club was bagging under Guardiola. So there you have it, 22 players, starters and substitutes for my Barcelona all-decade team. Remember, this video pairs nicely with episode 171 of the Barcelona podcast, so check that out and don't forget to like and subscribe to get more videos like this. Until next time, happy holidays and Forza Barça.